Hello, my name is Delina. You ever wonder what it feels like to watch your own family rewrite your story? One quiet erasure at a time? It started with a laptop, sinking to the bottom of a pool. My brother smiled as it disappeared beneath the water because I refused to pay his $16,000 debt. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing my mother called it an accident. That my name vanished from my father's will like I'd never existed. That behind every "we love you," there was a whisper, "Stay small." So I ask you, what do you do when the people who raised you are the same ones who try to erase you? I'd been putting it off all week. Every time Carlin's name lit up my phone screen, I let it go to voicemail. I told myself I was busy, that I'd call him back later, but the truth was simpler. I knew what he wanted. I could feel it like a weight pressing down on my chest. Sunday morning arrived like most others in Tempe, dry heat rising early, the sun already high by mid-morning. I was on my patio, trying to salvage a slow, quiet day before the week stole it from me. My iced coffee sat on the table, condensation sliding down the glass, and my laptop, my lifeline, was open beside me, waiting for edits on a client's wireframe. I was mid-keystroke when I heard the side gate creak open. I didn't need to look up. That slow, smug rhythm of footsteps on my stone pavers had belonged to Carlin since we were kids. "Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time," he called out, already rounding the corner with that trademark grin that made strangers think he was charming. They didn't know him like I did. "Carlin," I said, measured. "Didn't know you were in the neighborhood. I figured I'd swing by. You've been hard to reach." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Been busy?" "Yeah, I can tell." He pointed toward my laptop, already scoping the space like he owned it. "Must be nice working from home. Flexible hours, sunny patio. You're doing good for yourself." It wasn't a compliment. It was a setup. We danced around small talk for maybe 10 minutes. Weather, some vague updates about mom, a half-hearted joke about politics, and then he leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Look, I won't beat around the bush," he said, exhaling through his nose like he was gearing up for something noble. "I need a loan." There it was. "How much?" I asked flatly. 16,000. I blinked, not because the number shocked me, but because he said it like he was asking for a ride to the airport. "For what?" "Some stuff caught up with me," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Card debt, a couple of things from the business. It's temporary, Del, just until I get back on my feet." "You said that last time," I reminded him. "That was different." "No, it wasn't. You said it would be 6 months tops. You never paid me back." His face tensed, just a twitch around the jaw, but he forced a smile. "It's not like you need the money right now." There it was again, that entitlement. That casual dismissal of my work, my hustle, my choices. I stared at him for a long moment, then said what I'd been practicing in my head for weeks. "I'm not giving you any more money." Silence stretched between us like a rope being pulled tight. "Excuse me?" I said, "No, Carlin. I can't keep fixing your messes. I won't." He laughed, like I'd told a joke. "You're serious?" "I'm done enabling you." He stood, too quickly, knocking the table slightly. My coffee sloshed. He turned toward the pool, hands on his hips. "I drove all the way here, and you won't even help your own brother. 16 grand is pocket change to you, Delina." "That's not the point. It's my pocket." He turned back toward me, and his eyes, for a moment, were stone cold. Then they shifted to something more amused. "Well," he said, voice syrupy smooth, "I guess you won't need that laptop anymore." Before I could react, he stepped forward, bumped the edge of the table with his knee, deliberate, precise, and in one smooth motion, the laptop slid off and tumbled into the pool with a quiet splash. Time slowed. The only sound was the soft bubbling as my lifeline sank into chlorinated silence. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Carlin smiled. That awful, satisfied smile. "Whoops," he said. "Should have put that thing somewhere safer." Then he turned and walked away, humming under his breath like he had just cleaned the gutters or mowed the lawn. I didn't move. Couldn't. That laptop held client projects, portfolios, invoices, everything. I had backups, of course, but not everything was current. Some of it would be lost forever. But it wasn't the laptop, it was the message. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a sibling squabble. This was punishment for daring to say no, for stepping outside the role he'd assigned me years ago, the fixer, the wallet, the quiet sister who never fought back. I stared at the last ripple on the water's surface, then turned away. I wouldn't cry, not for him, not this time. I walked back into the house, not even bothering to close the patio door behind me. Inside, the air was still cool from the AC, but I was burning. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, hands trembling just slightly. I sat at my kitchen counter, breathing slow, controlled breaths, no calls to make, no texts to send. I just sat. And as the sun reached its peak, I made a promise to myself. This wouldn't end like the last time. He wouldn't win. Not again. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the place where my laptop had vanished beneath the shimmering water. The patio was silent now, only the sound of the filter humming in the background. I finally turned away, not out of peace, but because staying still had become unbearable. I walked into the house, each step slow, deliberate. I grabbed a towel, wrapped it around the dripping wreck that had once held months of my work, and sat down at the edge of the sofa. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone, but when I saw the name, Mom, my thumb moved before my mind could stop it. "Hello?" I said, voice low. Her tone was clipped. "I just got off the phone with Carlin. He said there was an incident?" I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to measure my words. "He pushed my laptop into the pool, Mom." There was a pause. A beat too long. "Well, he said it was an accident." I blinked. "It wasn't." "Honey," she sighed, dragging the word like she was exhausted by me. "You've been so tense lately. Maybe you're reading too much into it." "Mom," he looked me in the eye and said, "Whoops," before it even hit the water. She laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but one of disbelief. "It's just a laptop, sweetheart. Let's not blow this out of proportion." Something inside me snapped. Not a scream, not a sob, just a silent tear between what I hoped she'd be and what she was. "You know he owes me money," I said. "You know this isn't the first time." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Your brother's had a rough time. You've always been the strong one. He's trying." That line, the same one since we were kids. He's trying. And I guess I was just supposed to keep being the strong one, silently absorbing the damage he left behind. "I'm tired of being the one who fixes everything," I said quietly. There was no response for several seconds. Then, "I think you should cool off a little before saying things you'll regret." "I'm not the one who should be regretting anything." "I'm hanging up now, Delina," she snapped. "We'll talk later." And she did. Hang up, that is, not talk. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. The quiet in the room was louder than anything she could have said. By mid-afternoon, the heat outside had peaked. The patio was flooded with light, but inside my apartment, it was dim and heavy. I couldn't just sit there any longer. I grabbed my keys, the laptop wrapped in the towel, and drove. 30 minutes down to Chandler felt longer than usual. The freeway stretched under a pale sky, my thoughts looping like a scratched CD, over and over, the same refrain. It was just a laptop. By the time I pulled up to my mother's house, my stomach had twisted itself into a hard knot. The house was familiar, but it didn't feel like home, not anymore. I rang the bell. She answered faster than I expected. Her smile faltered when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "I didn't think you'd come." "I want to talk," I said simply. "Carlin's inside," she added, like that should matter to me. I stepped in anyway. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and something burnt, probably from the oven. Carlin was sprawled on the living room couch, phone in hand, looking far too comfortable. He didn't look up, just said, "Hey, sis." I didn't answer. My mother hovered in the entryway, hands wringing. Would you like some water? No, I said. I want to see the will. That got Carlin's attention. What? He said, eyebrows rising. You heard me, I said. I know Dad wanted to leave me the lake house. I overheard you and Mom talking about it a few months back. Isolde froze. Then her eyes darted toward Carlin. He stood, slowly. You're really digging into that now? Yes, I said. Right now. Mom let out a breath and walked toward the office. The drawer made a soft thud as she opened it. She returned holding a thin folder and handed it to me. We made some changes, she said. Your father, he meant well, but after he passed, we had to be practical. I opened it. My name, missing. Just like that. Where once there had been space for me, there was now a blank line. Carlin needs the house more, she added, as if that explained everything. I stared at the paper. It wasn't just ink and signatures. It was a quiet erasure of who I had been in this family. My place, crossed out behind closed doors. You didn't think to tell me? I asked, voice low. We didn't want to hurt you, she said. Too late. Carlin chuckled, sitting back down. This is what you're upset about, a piece of property? You're better than this, Dell. You took my name off without asking. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I thought you'd grown out of being dramatic. I looked at Mom. Did Dad agree to this? Her mouth opened, then closed. He didn't leave instructions. We did what we thought was best. No, you did what was easy. I folded the paper slowly and placed it back in the folder. Thank you for showing me, I said. My tone was calm. Too calm. Carlin smirked and went back to his phone. I walked to the front door, my mother trailing behind me. Delina, please don't let this ruin. It didn't ruin anything, I interrupted. There wasn't anything left to ruin. The door shut behind me with a soft click. In the car, I sat for a moment, hands gripping the wheel. I wasn't erased by accident. I was erased because I didn't play my part anymore, because I said no, because I stopped bending, and they couldn't handle it. I didn't leave the car for a while after returning from Mom's house. I sat in the garage, engine off, listening to the tick-tick of the cooling hood. Yes, I could have gone inside, collapsed on the couch, turned on some meaningless TV just to numb the edge, but something held me there. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe it was the sudden clarity that things would never go back. By the time I finally made it inside, the Arizona heat had followed me in. The air conditioner hummed, but it couldn't reach the places inside me that had overheated. I placed my fried laptop on the kitchen counter, unwrapped the damp towel, and looked at it like it was a body I hadn't buried yet. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from Mom. No texts, no follow-ups. Carlin, of course, hadn't even pretended to care. But I had work to do. Client deliverables, freelance proposals, invoices, all of which were inaccessible since my backups were stored online. So, that Thursday morning, I got up early. The sky was still a dark wash of purple and blue as I padded into the living room with a cup of stale coffee. My laptop was dead, but I had a spare, a basic model I kept for travel. I powered it up, fingers moving automatically. I opened my browser, logged into my Google Drive, expecting at least the last week's worth of files. Empty. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My heart thudded, but I refreshed the page, checked my Wi-Fi, even restarted the browser. Nothing. Folders, gone. Shared files, gone. Portfolio, gone. I clicked into my activity log. That's when I saw it. Accessed at 2:17 a.m., 2 nights prior. Location, Chandler. I stared at that word for a long time. I hadn't been in Chandler at that hour, but someone else had. Someone who lived there. Carlin. My breath caught as I clicked deeper. The login came from a device using my mother's Wi-Fi. It wasn't masked. No VPN. No attempt to hide it. They didn't just take me out of the will. They were trying to erase me entirely. My identity wasn't built around money or property. It was built on my work, my independence, the name I'd carved out for myself in a field where women, especially women who looked like me, weren't always taken seriously, and they'd trashed it like it was just another piece of outdated furniture. I closed the laptop with a quiet click, not trusting myself to stay calm. My hands trembled, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Around noon, my phone rang. I recognized the number. Jason Richards, a creative director I'd worked with twice before. We'd shared laughs, a couple of drinks at a design conference in Denver, and he'd even recommended me for a project last spring. "Hey, Delina," he said, his voice a little too formal. "Got a minute?" "Sure," I said, wary. "I got sent a Reddit thread this morning," he began. Didn't want to believe it, but I figured I'd ask. My stomach turned cold. What did it say? "It's anonymous, but the writer claims you've ghosted on client work, that you blame your family for career stumbles, says you're unstable." I swallowed hard. That's not true. I figured as much, but it's spreading. After we hung up, I searched. The thread was there, on a designer-focused subreddit I used to frequent. A long post, well-written, hitting every weak spot someone like Carlin would know. There were screenshots, edited, of course, DMs that made me look like a flake, comments from fake accounts echoing the same accusations. The tone was familiar. So was the phrasing. My brother had always been articulate. It was one of the reasons people believed him. His lies didn't sound like lies. They sounded like warnings from someone concerned. By nightfall, I'd lost 2 freelance gigs. One contact stopped replying to my emails altogether. A cousin unfollowed me on Instagram. An ex-client I'd mentored years ago sent a message that read simply, "Wow, you fooled us all." I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, letting the dark press in from every corner of the room. My inbox, silent. My phone, still. The world I'd built, fractured. I scrolled through the fake thread again, not because I didn't know what it said, but because I needed to feel the impact. I needed to remember this moment. I took screenshots, saved HTML backups, cataloged every post. If Carlin thought he could erase me by deleting files and poisoning my reputation, he underestimated how I kept records. I always had. Contracts, conversations, client emails. I archived everything. It wasn't paranoia. It was professionalism. Still, that night, I felt small. I lay on the floor of my living room because my bed felt too warm, too safe, and safety didn't exist anymore. Memories came. Not the warm ones, the filtered ones, like the time I won a regional coding competition in high school. But Mom made me skip the award dinner because Carlin had detention and someone needed to stay home with him. Or the job I turned down in Seattle because Mom cried and said, "You're the only one who doesn't leave me." Silence wasn't noble. It was what they used to keep me compliant. A storm rolled in after midnight, the kind that made you think the sky was ready to split open. I sat by the window, watching the rain start. Somewhere between thunderclaps, my father's voice came back to me, gruff, tired, but unwavering. "If you ever want to be respected, you better learn to be louder." He hadn't always understood me, but he'd seen me, he'd seen Carlin too, and he'd known. I opened my notes app, not to write a blog post, not to rant. I started a timeline. January, Carlin asks for money. I refuse. February, laptop destroyed. March, files deleted. Smear thread appears. I created folders, uploaded screenshots, found emails, backed everything up twice. Once to a drive Carlin didn't know existed, once to a platform he couldn't guess. I titled the master folder, Reclamation, because this wasn't revenge, this was recovery. I had never felt so awake and so alone in my life. After days of watching silence pile up in my inbox and trust peel away in layers, family, friends, colleagues, what I was left with was less than nothing. But something inside me had shifted. If I wasn't going to be seen, I would make sure I was heard. So that Sunday, while most people were easing into dinner with people they called their people, I put on jeans, a clean shirt, and drove to my mother's house. No text ahead, no warning. I didn't want an invitation, I wanted the truth. The sky was unusually dim for Arizona in spring, clouds thick like they were holding something back. The air smelled like scorched pavement, and wind tugged gently at the edges of my sleeves as I stepped up to the porch. I rang the doorbell once and opened the screen door without waiting. Inside, the familiar scent of pot roast hit me, but it didn't feel warm. It felt performative. Carlin was seated at the piano in the corner of the living room, lazily pressing out a melody I vaguely recognized. Something classical, slightly dramatic, like he was scoring his own movie. My mother stood near the kitchen archway, apron still on, smiling, until she saw me. "Delina?" she said, eyebrows rising. "I didn't want to miss dinner," I replied. My voice was flat, controlled. Carlin turned his head, smirked, then continued playing like this was all some delightful coincidence. I walked into the dining room, set my phone down in the center of the table, and pulled out a chair. "Sit down," I said to both of them. "We need to talk." My mother hesitated, hands still gripping a dish towel. "Sweetheart, this isn't—" "Now," I said. I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't need to. Carlin stood up, clapping his hands like a theater actor finishing a soliloquy. "Well, this is new." I stared at him. "Let's talk about the Google Drive." He blinked, then smiled again. "You think I care about your spreadsheets? You accessed my account from Mom's house. I have the log, the time, the IP address." Mom turned toward him, then back to me. "What are you talking about?" "You don't know?" I asked. He uses my laptop sometimes. I don't monitor what—" "She knew," Carlin interrupted. "But she didn't think it was a big deal. You deleted everything." "Backups exist," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Unless you didn't keep them, in which case—" "Sounds like a you problem." I looked at my mother, hoping, even now, to see shock, or at least disappointment. I got neither. "He said it was an accident," she muttered. "That he thought he was clearing space. You're always so sensitive about things." "Sensitive?" I said. "You erased me from Dad's will, and now you're defending your son for erasing my work." Carlin scoffed. "There it is. She's mad she didn't get the house." "This isn't about a house," I snapped. "It's about how you treat me like I don't exist unless you need something. It's about how every time he screws up, you act like I'm the one being cruel when I say no." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "Carlin said he made some mistakes. But you've changed. You sound angry." "That did it." "You don't want the truth," I said slowly. "You want quiet. You want me to swallow everything so dinner doesn't get uncomfortable." "You think this is easy for me?" she shot back, finally raising her voice. "I'm a mother. I have 2 children." "You have 1, I corrected. "The one who lies and manipulates, and you reward it every single time." Carlin laughed like I'd told a joke. "Well, someone's had a rough week." I stood up, leaned across the table. "I've lost clients, friends, people who once believed in me, because of you." He shrugged. "You always made it too easy. You act like the perfect one, Del, but everyone's got cracks." "I just showed them yours." I turned to Mom. "And you let him." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Nothing honest, anyway. I left without saying goodbye. On the way home, the air grew colder, like the weather had finally caught up to the atmosphere between us. I didn't turn on music. I didn't scroll my phone. I just drove in silence, the only sound coming from my tires on the pavement. When I got home, the silence felt different. Less empty, more decided. I poured a glass of water, sat on the couch, and stared at the window as dusk rolled in. Around 9, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Delina?" a familiar voice asked. It took me a second. "Nathan?" "Hey. Yeah. Sorry to call out of the blue. I've been seeing some stuff online and I wasn't sure what to believe." "What kind of stuff?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Carlin messaged me. Said you've been going through a rough patch. Mentioned some stuff about your dad, that you used to borrow money and not return it." I sat up straighter. "And you believed him?" There was a pause. "I didn't want to. But he sent screenshots. Said your business was in trouble. That you were blaming everyone else." "You should know better," I said quietly. "I thought I did," he said. I hope you get the help you need." I hung up, not in anger, Not even in pain. Just done. By the time the text came in from my mother, "Don't come next week. Let things cool off," I was already opening a new document. I titled it, "Things They Don't Get to Rewrite." Then I started the list: names, dates, files, witnesses. Because if they were going to treat me like the villain, they'd better be ready for what the real story looked like. Monday came and went in a fog. I answered only the most essential emails, mostly to clients who hadn't abandoned me yet, and spent the rest of the day making quiet updates to my project archives. I moved like someone working in a museum of her own life, dusting off files, reorganizing old folders, pretending that what I was doing was just regular maintenance. But deep down, I knew I was preparing for something. On Tuesday afternoon, I realized I'd left a box of old photos and mementos at Mom's house. It wasn't valuable, not financially, but it mattered. So I drove to Chandler. The streets were quiet, and the weather had finally shifted. Cooler air, lighter breeze, spring pretending to be fall. I didn't call ahead. When I got there, no one answered the door. But the porch light was on, even in broad daylight, and the front windows were cracked open. I sat on the bench near the walkway and waited, hoping someone would show. Then I heard it. Carlin's voice. Smooth, loud enough to carry through the open window on the side. "Nah, man, she won't do a thing. Trust me, she always folds. That's why it's so easy." I froze. Every part of me went still. I didn't hear the response from whoever he was talking to, but Carlin chuckled. Deep, satisfied. "Look, I've got Mom in my corner, right? And people believe what you feed them early? That's the trick. Get ahead of the truth." My hands were clenched before I realized it. He was bragging, not even hiding it. "She's soft," he said. "Always has been. Just gotta wait her out." I stood slowly, not wanting to make a sound. The moment felt sacred in the worst way. Like I'd stumbled upon something rotten buried in the yard. There was nothing left for me in that house, not even that box of memories. I didn't knock. I walked back to my car, quietly slid into the driver's seat, and drove off with the windows rolled down, letting the air carry his words as far from me as possible. That evening, after dinner, something simple and mostly untouched, I was washing a few dishes when my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hello?" "Delina?" a woman's voice asked, familiar, warm, but cautious. "Aunt Malis?" She exhaled. "I wasn't sure if you'd pick up." "I wasn't sure I would either," I said, setting the plate down. "I saw some of what Carlin posted," she said softly. "Read it, LinkedIn, all of it. I didn't want to believe it was him, but then I spoke to your mom. She said, things I didn't expect." "Like what?" "That you were being too harsh, that you brought this on yourself." I asked if she knew about the smear campaign, and she said, "Sometimes people need to be reminded they're not perfect." There it was again. That underlying belief. If you stand up for yourself, you must be arrogant. If you set boundaries, you're difficult. "I'm sorry," Malis said. "I should have said something sooner. But I kept some things, just in case." I sat down. "What kind of things?" "Old messages, screenshots, even a document Carlin once signed using your name to take out a personal loan. I didn't understand the whole story at the time, but I knew it wasn't right." "Can you send them?" "Yes. I'll email them tonight." I didn't say thank you, not because I wasn't grateful, but because I was holding back something else. Relief, anger, vindication, all crashing into one another. After we hung up, I opened my laptop, not the one Carlin destroyed. A newer one, clean, empty, ready. I made a new folder. I called it Reclamation. Then I got to work. I didn't rush. I went methodically, like someone setting a table for war. Screenshots, call logs, IP address traces, quotes from Carlin's posts, comparison of phrasing. Everything went into labeled folders, each tagged by date and type. I created a spreadsheet to track interactions. Who called when, what they said, what was implied. Every insult, Every dismissal, every "you're overreacting," and "he's had a rough time." The more I documented, the less shaky I felt. I stayed up until 2 in the morning. The house was silent. No cars passed outside. Even the hum of the fridge seemed muted, like the world was holding its breath for me. When I finally closed my laptop, my hands didn't tremble. I stared at the folder one last time before I backed it up to a separate drive and emailed it to a new, private address. I made tea, sat on the couch, and thought. There had been a time, not that long ago, when I would have cried after a call like that, when I would have doubted my right to fight back. Not anymore. I didn't want an apology. I didn't care if Carlin confessed. I didn't even care if my mother changed her mind. I wanted the truth to live outside of me. So I opened a new tab, searched for a law firm in Phoenix specializing in defamation and digital harassment. I read through a few bios, then clicked on one. A woman named Melanie Ortiz. Her description was simple. "I don't believe in letting liars win." I clicked Contact, filled out the form, attached a zip file. In the subject line, I wrote, "Ready to file." Then I clicked Send. The morning I submitted the complaint, the sun was so bright it almost felt sarcastic. It was one of those crisp, blue-sky Arizona mornings that trick you into believing the world is kind. The kind of day you'd associate with porch swings and grocery lists, not legal action. I made myself a cup of black coffee, ignoring the urge to add anything sweet. My laptop sat open on the table, the formal complaint document displayed on the screen, title bold at the top. Formal complaint, harassment, defamation, property damage. I'd read it 8 times since Melanie, my attorney, sent the final draft. It was clean, meticulous, written without anger, just facts. Carlin's full name was there, along with screenshots, digital forensics, timestamps, emails. The folder I'd labeled Reclamation had finally found its purpose. I hovered over the submit button for a few seconds, and then I clicked. There was no dramatic sound, no flash of lightning. Just a little progress wheel and then, submitted. He declared war in silence. I answered the same way. The rest of the morning passed in slow, quiet motions. I did laundry, vacuumed, answered emails. I even watered the tiny cactus in the kitchen I usually forgot existed. Anything to distract me from checking my phone every few minutes. 2 days later, I was sitting on the edge of my bed, tying my shoes for a grocery run, when an email notification popped up on my phone. Subject: Urgent. Contract paused pending review. It was from my largest client, the one responsible for over half of my income. I opened it with trembling hands. "Delina, we're reaching out with concern regarding allegations that have come to our attention, suggesting you've used AI-assisted content and misrepresented original work in recent deliverables. Due to the severity of these claims, we're placing the current project on hold until further notice." The message continued in a polite, sterilized tone that made the gut punch land harder. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the screen. No one had called me. No one had asked for my side. I emailed them back immediately. Then called. Straight to voicemail. Something told me this wasn't about AI. I opened my work email. In the spam folder, I found it. An anonymous message forwarded from a burner address. A collage of fake conversations, altered deliverables, even a fake portfolio site. Cheap knockoffs of my designs, with metadata wiped and comments added suggesting lazy shortcuts. It was ugly, and it was familiar. The tone, the structure, the passive-aggressive, just thought you should know phrasing. I knew Carlin's voice, even when he was hiding behind a keyboard. And I knew exactly what to do. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I opened a new folder in Reclamation and named it Client Sabotage. I copied the email, screenshotted the metadata, backed it up, logged every step. Then I called Melanie. "We need to escalate the case," I told her. I could hear her typing in the background. "Understood. We'll include this in the supplemental filing." "Will it be enough?" "It's more than enough," she said. "You're building something airtight." That evening, I booked a meeting with one of my smaller clients, the one who had stuck around through all of this. We met at a local cafe, one with a quiet patio tucked behind the building, shielded by desert plants and half shaded by a canvas awning, the kind of spot where real conversations happened. I arrived early, ordered tea, and sat with my notes open. I didn't plan to beg. I planned to explain. When she arrived, she gave me a small, warm smile. Her name was Joy, and she ran a nonprofit focused on literacy for immigrant families. She was sharp, direct, and most importantly, honest. "I've seen the threads," she said, getting straight to it. I nodded. "It's been a mess." "Do you know who's behind it?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" I pulled out a printed copy of a comparison sheet. Carlin's messages from years ago matched line by line with the anonymous ones. The phrasing, punctuation, formatting, it's consistent. I've got a digital forensics consultant confirming the metadata. Joy read in silence for a few minutes. When she looked up, she said, "You know, the fact that you've documented all this, most people would have just deleted their socials and disappeared." "I thought about it," I admitted. "Why didn't you?" "Because not everyone walked away." She nodded slowly. "We'd like to continue our work with you. We'll issue a public statement if needed." Something unknotted inside me, not entirely, but enough to breathe again. We finished our tea, talked about fonts and reading levels and grant proposals. It was the most normal I'd felt in weeks. Afterward, I walked around the block before heading back home. The streets were golden with late afternoon light, kids on scooters, a dog barking in the distance, someone watering their lawn too early. Life was still happening, and I was still part of it. That night, I updated the reclamation folder one more time. I wrote a short journal entry, not for anyone else, just for me. Not everyone will stay, but the ones who do, that's where I rebuild. I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and lay down, not feeling safe, exactly, but steady. The war wasn't over, but I had my footing now. The morning Carlin faked his near-death experience, I was drinking coffee and finalizing my response to the updated legal strategy with Melanie. I was deep in thought, combing through documents, when my phone buzzed with a link from Joy, the nonprofit director I'd met at the cafe. The message read simply, "You've got to see this." I clicked it. A blurry hospital photo greeted me. Carlin, dramatically reclined in a hospital bed, eyes closed, an oxygen tube looped under his nose like a prop. The caption underneath, posted on his Facebook and reshared across multiple platforms, read, "Grateful to be alive. Took a nasty shock while trying to fix mom's wiring. Family's been through enough. Some people care more about their laptops than their blood." The comments were exactly what you'd expect. "So sorry, Carlin. Stay strong. Your sister always seemed cold. Some people just aren't built for family." The post had gone semi-viral, enough that my name was now being dragged through mud by complete strangers who had only seen one photo, one caption, and had apparently decided that my refusal to endlessly forgive and forget made me cruel. Heartless. He'd timed it perfectly, just as I had begun to regain footing, just as I'd stopped feeling like the one drowning. I stared at the screen until the photo blurred from the tension in my eyes. It was a move straight out of Carlin's playbook. Control the narrative, strike before someone else can. And once again, he used Mom, her house, her safety, her name, to make it seem noble. I sat for a while without moving. Then, just after 11, my inbox pinged again. New message from Aunt Malis. Subject: "This is what you need." It was one line, one PDF attachment. I clicked without hesitation. It was a scanned document, clearly aged, a loan agreement from 4 years ago, $9,000. The lender, a private funding group in Flagstaff, the borrower, Delina Collins. But I hadn't taken out any such loan. At the bottom was a shaky signature, mine, except it wasn't. My heart clenched. I recognized the handwriting. It looked just enough like mine to pass to someone who wasn't paying attention. But not to me. Not to Melanie. There was a brief note from Malis at the bottom of the email. "Carlin asked me to notarize this. I refused. I suspected then, but didn't have the full picture. I've kept it all this time. I'm sorry it took me this long." I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at the screen, letting the truth sink deeper into my bones. He had used my name to commit fraud, and my mother had defended him again and again because it was easier than acknowledging the rot. I forwarded the email to Melanie within minutes. "This," I wrote, "is our final domino." She replied almost instantly, "We're not just suing for damages anymore. We're going after his entire credibility." I imagined Carlin sitting in his hospital bed, smug, scrolling through his notifications, seeing all the likes, all the messages that told him he was loved, that I was the villain. He wanted attention. I was about to give him an audience. That afternoon, Melanie and I met via Zoom. Her face was calm, composed. She had the air of someone who'd been through enough courtroom showdowns to spot the pattern of a coward playing victim. "We're going to build this out as a pattern of behavior," she explained. "It's not about a one-time incident anymore. It's about consistent, calculated damage." I nodded. "We already have work sabotage, identity fraud, public defamation, document falsification, and now emotional manipulation used to discredit a witness. That hospital stunt is more than petty, it's strategic and reckless." We outlined the next steps: depositions, a restraining order to protect digital access, and a social media brief to attach to the suit. After the call ended, I logged off everything: email, Facebook, Reddit. I needed silence, not absence, but stillness. I turned off my phone, closed the laptop, and stood at the kitchen counter in complete quiet. Even the street outside was unusually still, as though the world sensed I was pulling back the arrow before the release. I lit a candle. Lavender, my father's favorite scent. Then I opened my secondary laptop, the one Carlin didn't know existed, and began preparing what would become the truth bomb. Not a rant, not a plea, a series of plain, factual, time-stamped slides, each one layered with evidence: dates, contracts, emails, screenshots, voice notes. I even added a comparison of his phrasing in anonymous posts versus his known writing. Let the world decide. I didn't do this because I needed applause. I did it because I needed closure. I created a final folder, separated from the legal documentation. This one wasn't for court. This one was for the internet. I named it Receipt. It was the kind of folder you drop when words have run dry and you're tired of explaining. I spent the rest of the evening backing everything up twice, on the cloud and on a hard drive locked in a fireproof safe I'd bought on impulse 2 years earlier. By midnight, I had everything ready. One post, one truth, one audience, and no more room for doubt. By the time Saturday morning rolled in, everything was ready. I'd slept for maybe 4 hours, not out of nervousness, but out of sheer anticipation. It was the same kind of buzz I used to get before a major product launch, except this time, the product was the truth. I brewed coffee like I always did, but the moment I sat down at the kitchen table, steam curling around my fingers, I knew this day would shift something irreversible. I didn't feel powerful or brave. I felt done. And that, somehow, was more solid than courage. I opened LinkedIn, clicked Create Post. The title came to me faster than I expected, like it had been waiting inside me the whole time. Silenced by Bloodline, Why I Finally Spoke Out. Then I attached the files, slide after slide. Screen-recorded evidence of deleted files, the forged debt document, the impersonation email to my client. I added a brief note to each one, concise, emotionless, clear. I included the formal complaint Melanie had filed 2 weeks ago, the signed affidavit from Aunt Malis, the timestamp comparisons, and, because I had nothing left to protect, I attached the final screenshot of Carlin's hospital post, the one where he painted me as heartless while still hooked up to a fake oxygen tube. Then, I sat back. I stared at the post button for a full minute, and I clicked it. Immediately after, I uploaded the same content to Reddit under my real name. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't interested in dragging this through back channels or sharing anonymously. I was done with shadows. Then I opened Instagram, posted a story slide that said, "Receipts? Facts. My side of the story. Click the link." And I logged off. For 4 hours, the world said nothing. No likes, no messages, just silence. I went for a walk. Down the canal path near my apartment, past the same prickly pear cactus I'd passed every Saturday for the last 3 years. I stopped at the farmer's market, bought an iced tea, and pretended like I hadn't just thrown a match into the center of my family's entire reputation. By the time I returned home, my phone had buzzed 27 times. I unlocked it. Joy was the first message. "You are incredible." Then a string of messages from former clients. "I had no idea. I'm sorry. I always thought something didn't add up. Thank you for sharing this. If you're still doing freelance work, I'd love to collaborate again." The Reddit thread had hit the front page of RR True Off My Chest and was spreading to Twitter, TikTok, and niche professional forums. One user wrote, "This is the wildest story of sibling sabotage I've ever read, and she has the receipts to back it up." But the one that caught me off guard came from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Delina, it's Tara. I just saw everything. I'm crying. You were always the strong one. I wish I'd believed you back then." That's when I knew. This wasn't about taking Carlin down. It was about reclaiming my voice from every hand that had twisted it. The next morning, Carlin's employer released a statement on LinkedIn. "We do not condone unethical conduct. Mr. Carlin is no longer affiliated with our organization. We are conducting a full internal investigation." It was cold, corporate, but it was a thunderclap all the same. Within hours, news stations picked up the story. Not all of it, just the edges. The local channel ran a segment titled "Woman Speaks Out After Sibling Allegedly Forges Documents in Defamation Case." I didn't watch it. I didn't need to. By Sunday afternoon, I received a message from a blocked number. "Carlin's trying to call," Melanie said, forwarding me a screenshot. "He wants to settle privately. Should we respond?" I looked at the notification for a while. "No," I said. "Let him speak in court, like I had to." My phone buzzed again later that evening. It was a text from my mother. She hadn't messaged me in weeks. It read, "We didn't know. I didn't know. Please stop this. Families don't air dirty laundry like this." I didn't reply. She still didn't get it. This wasn't dirty laundry. This was theft. This was character assassination. This was years of bending and folding and swallowing and nodding. I sat on my balcony as the sun dipped behind the buildings, my inbox still filling with apologies and encouragement from strangers, colleagues, friends who had stayed silent for far too long. I didn't feel victorious, but I did feel lighter. I opened LinkedIn one last time, read through the thousands of comments, then I deleted the post, not out of shame, not out of fear, because it had done its job. The truth was out, and I didn't need to keep screaming. I walked through the neighborhood later that evening, passing a row of children drawing chalk outlines on the sidewalk. One little girl was sketching a huge sun with orange rays stretching into the street. Her mother glanced at me, smiled politely. I nodded back. I wasn't invisible anymore. I didn't win anything. But I reclaimed something that should have never been taken. 6 months later, I stood in front of a very different kind of door. This one painted a soft, forget-me-not blue, framed by aging white trim, and a welcome mat that didn't scream Pinterest perfect. It was just there, a little frayed around the corners, saying what it needed to without trying too hard. The keys in my hand jingled, a quiet, promising sound. They didn't feel familiar yet, but they were real. Mine. I took a deep breath and opened the door to my new apartment in Austin, Texas. The scent of lemon cleaning spray and fresh paint hit me first. Underneath it, something simpler, a blank canvas smell. The place was small, cozy, and honest. There were no granite countertops, no stainless steel appliances, no glossy magazine aesthetics, but the windows stretched wide, letting in the kind of golden sunlight that touched everything like it was welcome. The hardwood floors creaked as I walked across them, just enough to remind me I was grounded. I set a box down on the kitchen counter and took a moment, not to celebrate, not to make a declaration, just to be. This wasn't a grand finale or a victory lap. This was a beginning, and beginnings don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they arrive like a quiet breath at the end of a long sentence. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of my makeshift office, a folding desk by the window, a secondhand swivel chair, my new laptop already glowing with that first-time excitement. Nothing extravagant, just functional, honest space. I posted it on my private Instagram with a single caption. Clean slates aren't always clean, but they're still slates. Then I tucked my phone away, turned on my playlist, and got to work. I started part-time at a small design firm across town. The team was tight-knit, the kind that actually meant it when they said no working weekends. The clients were local nonprofits, family-run shops, startups trying to matter. The pay wasn't as high as the old days, but the hours were kind. The stress didn't follow me home. I picked up a few freelance clients on the side, people I trusted, whose vision aligned with mine. No brand speak, no manipulation, just collaboration and quiet joy in building something meaningful. Twice a week, I volunteered at the public library, one of those red brick buildings tucked between a bakery and a post office that still used real stamps. I taught digital basics to older women, mostly Spanish-speaking immigrants. Some didn't know how to open a browser. Others just wanted to email their grandkids or navigate online banking without fear. They reminded me why I fell in love with design in the first place. Not for aesthetics, not for status, for function, for people, for connection. One overcast afternoon, walking home from a grocery run with a bag full of peaches and a loaf of sourdough tucked under my arm, I passed by a newsstand on a quiet corner downtown and froze. There, staring back at me from the magazine rack, was my own face, Women Who Rise. I blinked. At first I thought it was someone who looked like me. But no. There I was, shoulders squared, hair loose, no makeup, just me. And beneath the headline, a quote. She reclaimed her name and didn't burn a single bridge. She just stopped walking across them. I laughed. Not a cynical laugh, not a bitter one. A quiet, full-bodied laugh that bubbled up and caught me by surprise. The kind that fills your chest because, for once, you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're standing in a life you once imagined, but never really believed you deserved. That evening, I made dinner in my tiny kitchen. Just pasta tossed with garlic and olive oil. A glass of red wine from the bottle I'd been saving since I moved in. I set the table for one, lit a candle out of habit, and opened the magazine article on my tablet while the noodles cooled. Halfway through the piece, as I sipped my wine, an email notification appeared. From Isolda. Subject, saw you on Women Who Rise. Body, I read the article. I was proud. I'm sorry. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the screen. I read it once, then again. And I waited for a wave of emotion. A need to cry or yell or respond with some perfectly crafted monologue. But it didn't come. There was no urge to rehash the past, no fire left to pour into a reply. I typed one line. Thank you. I wish you peace. I'm okay now. And I meant it. I didn't sit there waiting for a response. I didn't keep checking my inbox. Some wounds don't close up and vanish. They become part of you. Integrated. Like a healed fracture. Stronger at the break, still occasionally sore when the weather shifts. I didn't block her, but I didn't refresh the page either. The next morning, I stood barefoot on my little balcony, coffee in hand. The street below was quiet, lined with old live oaks and neighbors who waved instead of honked. A light breeze rustled the rosemary and thyme in my potted herb box. I kept meaning to replant them properly, but for now, they were surviving just fine. A mockingbird sang from the telephone wire. Down the street, someone was mowing a lawn that didn't need mowing, just something to do, I guessed. My phone buzzed with a text. New client. The team loves your new design. You nailed it. I smiled. Not because I needed the praise, but because I didn't. This time, success wasn't proof. It wasn't armor. It wasn't redemption. It was just a quiet confirmation that I was finally living, not performing. Some stories don't end with a bang, or a slammed door, or a fire lit behind you. Sometimes they just stop echoing. And that's enough. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people sitting across your dinner table. This story wasn't just about a broken laptop or a stolen inheritance. It was about choosing truth over silence, even when it costs you everything. Have you ever had to walk away from your own family just to protect your peace? If this story hit close to home, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that challenge, heal, and reveal.